Hello there, stampers and card makers. It's Jackie Bolhuis from Klompen Stampers. Today, I have kind of a over-the-top card for you. Now, you all know, if you follow me, that I am all about making quick and easy cards. I don't do anything that's complicated. Well, when you look at today's card, you're going to kind of think it's over the top, but it is still easy, and that is kind of my key. It might not be quick. Okay, quick cards, most of my cards you can probably make in 5 or 10 minutes. This one's going to take a little bit more work, but it is not hard. Now we are going to use, it's called the Merriest Moments bundle, and this is in the mini catalog. I started playing with this and I think I spent hours die cutting and embossing. It's called a hybrid embossing folder, which means it has dies and an embossing folder that combine. We had this, I don't know, a year ago, not even, probably 6 months ago, with the seashells bundle, if you remember that one. And I did a video on that as well, showing like different ways and combinations to put the pieces together. And that's kind of what I'm going to do for you today. We're going to start out by making my kind of over-the-top card that's still easy, just lots of steps and lots of layers. And then I'll show you a couple other versions using different combinations of those dies in embossing folder. And then we'll play around with even some other ways to use them. Now, I know you might kind of get overwhelmed because I'm going to say, use this piece and then use that piece, cut and then die, or die cut and then cut, and you're going to go, wait a second. What I'm going to do over on my blog post there will be a link down in the description of this video. I will have a sheet that you can download, and I will put pictures on there of like all the different ways I've come up with to use these two dies and embossing folder together, so you can see all the different looks you can get. And I'll have a little picture and I'll tell you the pieces I used and the order I used the pieces, because that's kind of the key. You know, I played around and I tried different options, and I really found what works, number one, the easiest, but also gives you the best results. Okay, and you'll see as we go along what I'm talking about. So don't be overwhelmed. Sit back and enjoy. See how these dies and embossing folder work, and then make sure you go grab that download so that you can see how to get the various looks with the different pieces and what order to do them. So that's a lot. If you're here for the first time, this, like I said, is a little over the top for me. Normally my cards are very quick. They're always easy. So we're still easy. We might not just be so quick. So make sure you check out my other videos, most of which are all quick and easy cards. And don't forget to subscribe if you like my video. That way, whenever I post a video, you won't miss one. And share my channel with your crafting friends as well. Alrighty, let's get to work because we have a lot to do today. Hang on one second. So here's a peek at the products. It's on page 43 of our current mini catalog. Now, if you don't have this catalog or any catalog because you don't have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I would love to send it to you, and I'd love to be your demonstrator and help you with all your stamping and ordering needs. Make sure you hop to my website. Again, that link's down in the video description, and you'll be able to request a catalog there as well. So let's set this aside. Here is our stamp set. I love the images in here, as well as some great greetings for your Christmas cards. And then here are the 3 pieces that I was talking about for this hybrid embossing folder. So there is the 3D embossing folder, and then there's 2 different dies. You can see this is more of an outline. This one has lots of detail. And I'm going to show you how to get different looks using different pieces and kind of, you know, how to put them all together. So let's set all of this stuff aside, and we're going to go ahead, and I think I never do this, but I'm going to show you the card up front, so you can really see what we're going for the look of this. Maybe we'll save the inside till the end. But see all these beautiful detailed layers. So let's set that aside and get started here. We have scrap paper. Okay, now it's actually a quarter sheet because you need a pretty good size here of scrap paper to do what we're going to do. So what we're going to start out with is using, we're going to call this one the detailed die. So this will be our outline die, this will be our detailed die, and then our embossing folder. and I am going to go run this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. Now, just as a reminder, when you're using dies, make sure you follow it tells you right here, but for a detailed die, we need to use our die, what do they call this? Thin die adapter, I can't even remember what they call it. And then we use our platform, and then we're going to use a cutting plate, our cardstock, our die, and another cutting plate. So this is how it goes through. So let me go do this and I'll be right back. Okay, so let's take this apart here. And see, we got pieces falling out already. We're gonna end up with little die cut pieces everywhere. So mine's coming out pretty good. You know, you can always use that die brush. I love how that helps pop things out and loosen it up. Now, because there's a lot of detail in this die, if it doesn't seem to cut all the way through and fall out really easy like mine did, sometimes just running it through the machine twice will help. So, you know, roll it forward and roll it backward. So all machines are different because it's really kind of based on the pressure of your machine. So, okay, see that piece? It would really be pretty to use it all on its own, but we're going to go ahead and combine it with the embossing folder, and that's going to put all the details. So I want you to take a good look at this, and you're going to see the difference after we emboss it. So you need to take your embossing folder, and let's see if I got, and it's really easy to match this up. Now, some people have said that you can actually cut it and emboss it all the same, but that I don't know, it kind of scares me. I don't want to put my dies in my thing, in my embossing folder. And I feel like this works just as easy. Maybe I got to do an extra step, but I feel like it works really good for me. So everything's lined up. It's easy to line up. And now for 3D embossing folders, we are going to simply use our base plate, our folder, and then the specialty plate. Now, if you're still using the old Big Shot that Stampin' Up! Used to carry, everything's the same in that, but you do need the specialty plate with the 3D embossing folders because clear plates are not thick enough, so you need that little bit more thickness. So let's run this through and see what it looks like. Okay, so we had so many parts and pieces everywhere. Look at that. Look at the gorgeous detail on there. I just love how that ends up turning out. Now, some people, I know they've embossed first and then they've used the die to die cut it. But I found when you do that, you kind of smush down a lot of the embossing so you don't have as much detail. That's why I cut and then I emboss. Make sense? So that's piece number one. Now for piece number two, we are actually going to use our embossing folder again. So this piece is going to be 4 by 5 1/4. So we're going to stick it in there, just try to center it up the best we can. And we're going to run this through the exact same way. It's just a regular piece of cardstock. It's not die cut first. So let's go do that. Okay, so here's this one. Now you're probably wondering, why am I embossing and embossing a second time? So you can see we have two pieces. The only difference here is this one's not cut out. You don't have all the detail. Well, I decided for my card, I just wanted that extra detail of layering these on top of each other. Now, you wouldn't have to do that. This is gorgeous on its own, and you're going to see a second sample that I have for you that I'm going to use it just like that. It would be perfectly fine to use it. That is simply embossed with that embossing folder. But look at how elegant this is. Remember, this is our kind of over-the-top card for what I normally do. But the reason I wanted to layer it onto another embossed piece is so I could get all these, I guess they're like little snowflakes or whatever, around it. Because if I put this, let's say just on a piece like that, it's still pretty, absolutely. But look at the difference when we layer it on here and we get even more dimension. So let's just go ahead and stick that down right now for this layer. And this is all going to end up going on a card base when we're done. Now I am just putting that adhesive in the center because I want the center to be down nice and flat, but I want these to be loose, okay? So we're not gonna glue them down. So that is that part of our card. Now, let's go ahead and take a scrap here, and we are gonna use evergreen and put our greeting. So we are gonna use the thinking of you this festive season. And we're using a scrap because we're going to use another one of the dies. It's a great little rectangle that's stitched. So I'm going to set that right on there, and I'm going to take that over and cut it as well. Again, my exercise here going back and forth. But you know what? Since this is scrap and we're going to cut out a bunch of pieces, let's add some other things we need on here, because we're going to make the poinsettia flower. We're going to use one big and one small. And then let's see, we might need another scrap here. Let me grab one more scrap. I probably could have put those much closer together. So I think all in all, this card is probably going to use a full sheet of cardstock by the time we're done. But it's just basic white. What's one full sheet? Okay, now before I go over to the die cutter here, let's look at all of our dies. So we have a little flower, or part of the flower, and then we have the big one. And then I did these two pieces of greenery. So that's going to go on there. And let's see, this one is going to go on there. Now, a little tip with dies, you know, when you're really trying to line things up, let's see, in this one, we're going to have to spin around to find the right spot. Oop, there it is. What I like to do before I put it through the die cutting machine is take a little piece of washi tape. Now, Stampin' Up! Does not sell this anymore, but you certainly can find it at craft stores or any place online. It's just called washi tape. And when you do that, this piece was a little overkill, but you can put a little bit of tape on it like so. And what that will do is hold your die in place. You know, sometimes it's like you get it in that perfect spot. I'm drive myself crazy here. Where does this one go? Oh, there we go. You put it in a perfect spot, you run it through that die cutting machine, and it moves on you. So I like to little pieces. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do the same thing on these two and use this die here and cut all these pieces out. I'll be right back. Okay, here are all the pieces. Now, before we start sticking this all together, I'm going to just take crushed curry or any yellow, and there's the little dots here that go in the center. So we're just going to stamp them just in that smaller piece. So let's put our flower together first. And I'm not going to use any dimensionals yet, because otherwise we're going to get pretty bulky here. And we want this to be able to mail it. So we'll use some, but not on all the layers. So we're going to stick that down. And then on these two pieces of greenery, I'm just putting a little bit of adhesive down at the bottom so I can stick them underneath. So we'll just stick that one there, and this one, let's put some adhesive down on the bottom there, and let's come up that way a little bit. Okay, so there's our flower. Now notice how this piece, which we did use the die, okay, fits right on top of that. So now you certainly could, and again, this is all about not hard, just lots of layers. You certainly could stamp right there. But I really think by adding this extra piece, now you get the stitching and we're just getting more dimension on here. Let's take this one and we're going to use dimensionals. And let's see, we're going to put 5 on here. You know, especially if this is a card you're going to mail, go a little heavy on those dimensionals because that'll really hold it up for you. And then we're going to pop that right up in that center. And there's that piece. Now our flower, we're going to stick right over here, and it's going to overlap onto everything. Now what you want to be careful of is I don't want to put dimensionals on it all over the place because we don't want it to kind of be crooked. So I'm going to actually put one under here and one under the top of the flower. And you'll see that way how these dimensionals actually are going to go down on this bottom part and not up on the part that is already raised. So we're just going to get that right like so. And there is that front panel of the card. And then we're going to take our card base. Now for this, I like to use the thick just to give it a little more solid feel to it. And it was cut at 4 1/4 by 11, but you could cut that the other way as well. Now, all these dimensions, because I know I've been throwing quite a few out, all the dimensions will be on that blog post as well as the download for you. And I'll also have a list of all the supplies I used. So if you'd like to add this beautiful bundle to your next order, you'll be able to easily do that there. So there we go. Look at how gorgeous that is. Now, we always want to make sure we finish off the inside as well. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to move on to showing you different ways to combine the dies and the embossing folder. So we're going to just use another one of the greetings. All these pieces are in the same stamp set. So we have a joyful Christmas to you and yours. And then let's put some holly. We've got the poinsettias on the front there, so let's put the holly. Stamped it once, stamped it a second time. Just get a little more dimension in here because we're not, layering anything. Well, we're going to layer. We're not using any dimensionals or anything. So there's our inside. Now we could leave it like that, but I really like just a little layer of colored cardstock because we kept the front pretty white, but that doesn't mean we can't layer inside. And remember, I told you, lots of layers, lots of cardstock, but that's okay. But look at how pretty this is when we go ahead and stick this into the inside. Now again, you certainly could just stamp on the inside. You wouldn't have to add these extra layers if you don't want to. But I think this just really made it an extra special over-the-top card. But I hope you saw that it was not hard. There was just a lot of steps. Now let's look at a few other versions using different combinations of this hybrid embossing folder or the embossing folder along with the dies. So for this one, I really simplified. Well, I'm not even going to say simplified because it's still not hard. But you can see this bottom layer is just embossed. So over here, we stuck our cutout piece onto an embossed one. But for this one, we just took that piece of cardstock that becomes our layer. We wanted to try to center it up in here, so because we're going to have the center piece. And then I went ahead and just, let's see, I'm going to try to get it straight there. You can use that line as a guide to get things straight. And then I just embossed it. And you can see here's that same flower. I did cut this down a little bit. I'll have those measurements on the blog post. But I left the center and I popped up a piece just like we did on our over-the-top one. So really the only thing is different, and it's still the same amount of cardstock. I just used a layer of that evergreen in there and didn't cut out the white. Okay, do you see the difference? Which one do you like better? I think this one's more elegant looking. And then for the inside, I did not add those layers. So you can see the difference here where I just stamped on the inside of the card. So just a few less steps on this one, but you can see how beautiful that is as well. Now let's look at another one. Now this one's kind of, we'll call it backwards. You'll see we did an embossed layer and then cut out. You can see here where it's cut out. After it was embossed, we used the little window piece and we cut out that center. So it's kind of like a window card, I suppose, but I didn't put an extra piece under there. And then this, I popped up. There's quite a few dimensionals there. And then the piece that I cut out, I stamped our greeting on, and that, instead of using dimensionals, is pushed down in there. So it's kind of recessed, I guess would be the word for it. But again, so we had the embossing folder, and then this was cut out. Now here's your tip on this, and this is pretty important to get that nice embossed look. You are going to want to cut out the center first. So just eyeball this, line it up, cut that out. So you're going to get the square in there. And then after you've cut that out, you're going to put this piece in here and you'll be able to line it up really good. But that way you're going to get the best embossing, because I mean, theoretically we could emboss first, right? And then cut it out. But when you do that, it's going to kind of flatten out that embossing. like I said, so many different combinations, and really they're not hard. It's just a matter of what order to do things to get the best results. Now, those are all the cards that I completely made, but I want to show you a few other things you can do with the embossing folder and the dies. Now, really, the ideas are just endless on this. You can see here that, well, and I guess this is probably the same. Well, no, it's not the same, because let's see, I'll show you the difference. Let's look at these two. You can see here, they're both embossed, but on this one, we used the very detailed die to cut it out. So we have, almost, we'll call it lacy look. All the pieces are missing in there, where this one was cut out with just this outline die. Can you see the difference? See the outline, and see if you can get a good visual here. So for that one, I started out with my piece of cardstock and I die cut it first. And then I just had this, it's a blob. It doesn't really look like much. And then I took that piece and stuck it inside the embossing folder. And we can make believe here. I would put it the right way here, but make believe this wasn't embossed, but we can still line up all of those outlines and be able to emboss it after we've cut it. So cut, emboss. Anytime you're doing a combination, think emboss last to make sure you get that best embossing. Okay, so this was cut with that and embossed. This one was cut with this and then embossed. Now, check this out. This piece, I did not emboss, so this is just cut out, and this is how that one was done, okay? It was cut out, and then it was stuck in here and embossed. But you could leave it like this. If you wanted more of the flat look for whatever you're doing, maybe you want that center piece to have just more of a pop and you don't want embossing here, you could use just this. I mean, that would be pretty on a card as well. But here is the blob, we're going to call it the outline piece, which is what that started as. Okay, it started like this and then it was embossed. But when you've cut something out with the detailed die and then the outline die, the outline is just a teeny tiny bigger. And look at this, you can layer those pieces. And now we have the green underneath. Look at how pretty that is. And you can do it whether it's, this one's not embossed, but we can do the exact same thing with this one. And look at that, how beautiful that is. And we could even, if you wanted to emboss a layer, you could put that on and get that other embossing. But this just shows you how that outline one and the detailed one work together to get a whole nother look. So I will go ahead and finish this card for the blog post, so you'll see this one done up as well. And then remember, I'll have pictures and instructions, how to get all the different looks using all the different combinations of this. So video was a little bit longer than normal. As I warned you in the beginning, this was not a quick card. It was an easy card, but it was not necessarily quick because we just put a lot of layers on it. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Don't let this intimidate you at all, how these hybrid folders and dies work together, because they are so fun. You can see now how I started playing and it was like, oh, we can do this combination or that combination. And I'm sure there's other ways to use these as well that I didn't even do or think about. So I hope you add this to your next order. I think you will love making special Christmas cards with this. It's a special card. You might not want to make 100 of these. You're going to be doing lots of die cutting and embossing, but definitely a card for that special person in your life. Thank you for watching, and I promise I'll be back with a quick and easy card next time. Have a stamp happy day.